You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 197, When to Leave a Relationship. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, beautiful bravehearts. How is everyone doing? So a couple of weeks ago, we released a podcast episode with my client, Jewel, who talked about her continuously trying to make her relationship work, working on herself, and really how that impacted her heart healing journey and her breakup. And many of you reached out talking about how much you resonated with her experience. And what I thought might be really useful is to talk about this a bit more tangibly by exploring some indicators that help you understand if your relationship is no longer aligned for you versus should I do work on myself within the confines of your relationship. I think a lot of us struggle in terms of, do I continuously work on myself? Like, is this a me problem? And do I need to keep working on me and getting my thought work right? And all the work that I teach here on the podcast, do I need to do all of that first and then leave? Or, when is that time to leave? So I really work with a lot of people inside of the Get Over Your Ex program that haven't actually left their relationships or their partners yet. They haven't really been able to follow through on a breakup they know isn't, right for them. And so they want to do the work while still in the relationship. And I applaud them for that because in my mind, if you accomplish one, emotional freedom, and two, knowing you create any result you want in your life, which is the outcomes you create inside of that program, you're either going to get clearer about leaving and leave with ease, or you're going to get closer in your relationship because you aren't relying on your partner, or potentially both. Maybe you get closer in that relationship and you both equally feel clearer about, completing that relationship. So today, I want to talk with you about 5 signs that your relationship may no longer align with you. Then we're going to talk about what to remember while you're in the middle of this, gray area. Should I leave or should I stay? And finally, I'll give you some tangible tips on how to make that decision for yourself. And it's not going to be what you think. I'm not going to be pushing you to leave before you're ready. I'm not going to be giving you a lot of stuff that you've probably already heard online about, you deserve better and leave already. So I'm really excited to share my perspective on this because I think it's something that's not talked about in this way out in the open world. There's a lot of rah, break up with him kind of, mentality. And I think there's definitely a time and place for that and a celebration of a completing of a relationship. However, I don't think it's that clear, that simple. And I think a lot of times that mentality can put a lot of pressure on someone and, create an environment mentally for them where they're beating themselves up. They have a lot of negative self-talk because they're like, why haven't I left already? I should be able to do this. I know I deserve better. So I really want to talk about this. Okay, so let's start with the 5 signs. Y'all ready? So the first sign that I want to talk about is you're trying to change your partner. If you are finding yourself consistently wanting to change your partner and how they show up, asking them to be differently than they naturally are, oftentimes this can really seem like a healthy thing to do, right? Like, you should show up better and make me a priority. Don't bring this up or act this way. And it will make them like a better human and a better partner. And don't get me wrong, I'm all about communicating and asking for what you want in a relationship. But when you're constantly trying to get them to be different than they already are, it's something to be cognizant of. Is it something they actually want to be better at? Is it something that they recognize as a character flaw? Or are you trying to convince them that it is? There are billions of people in the world, and believe it or not, there are actually already humans out in this world that are showing up that way naturally. And that doesn't mean you just ditch your partner and move on to someone who does show up that way. But if it's something that causes a lot of friction and a lot of, resistance, or they have a lot of words with no action, potentially they don't actually want to show up that way. Potentially they don't actually want to change that about themselves. And maybe you'd align better with someone who already shows up that way. And a beautiful example of this is April from a show called The Ultimatum. On that show, you can clearly see how she wanted her partner to kind of grow up and be more caring and labor for her love. And he just didn't. He would sleep in. He wanted a wife who did all the things at home. And April did a lot of that, but he had zero initiative on his end. And now she's in this beautiful relationship where this new partner shows up and meets her exactly where she's at. And he naturally and organically was already that partner. So I think that's a beautiful example if you want to go watch that show and see it for yourself. Number 2, you have a full body knowing that it is a no, like capital K, knowing in your body that it's a no. It doesn't matter how much thought work or self-development work you've done, that deep down you know in your bones that this relationship is really not meant for you, and perhaps you're meant for more. You can just feel it, you know it. And it's almost like you find yourself gaslighting yourself to stay in the relationship, thinking that, if I could just get better or let go of this flaw or this thing, then maybe it would be better. When in reality, when you're honest with yourself, you just know. And I get that this can be really hard to do, right? But the first step is just getting honest with yourself and allow yourself to say, I know deep down, I don't believe that this relationship is for me, and I'm choosing to stay in it right now, and that's okay. Let yourself say, that's okay. I'm just getting comfortable with the idea that I really genuinely know it's not for me, but I'm staying, and that's okay for right now. Number 3, consistently justifying your authentic desires in life, compromising what you truly desire to be able to stay with your partner. The way that I like to describe this is I used to be in this relationship with a guy that I loved deeply and was probably one of the best partners I've ever had to date. But something that I had a deep calling for and a knowing was to move to Florida. I love it here. I'm meant to be here. I love walking outside and it being warmer outside than it is inside. I begged him to move with me. That whole idea of having a PowerPoint presentation as to why we should move here or travel the world. And I got all my stuff on my end situated over the years to be able to do those things, financial freedom, job freedom. And over the years, he stayed in jobs that he didn't like. He kept a job that geographically locked him into one location. He didn't actually want to move to Florida, and that was his authentic desire to stay there. And that's not good or bad or right or wrong, but it was a compromise that I kept making year over year to stay and live in a place I didn't want to for him. And it wasn't a bad place, but I knew I wanted more and something different. And it feels kind of like you're dragging someone along, trying to convince them that your dreams are what you want and that we should both go after them, instead of just finding someone who wants to go in that direction or has an idea as to how to support you in that direction while also maintaining the relationship. Number 4, having the same conversations over and over without a different outcome or without progress. This one is so hard. Isn't it the worst? Sometimes I find bravehearts get so defeated by having the same conversation that they actually just stop bringing it up because it constantly feels like friction. And then I see them walking on eggshells because they don't want their partner to get mad. And this is the worst feeling ever because you're not getting to be yourself. You're not being able to express your emotions. So if you're in this spot, I have a lot of empathy for you. I love you. You're not alone. And I promise you, you will move through this. If you're finding yourself having the same conversations over and over again and there's no forward momentum, this might be a sign that the relationship is not in alignment for you. And let me show you kind of what a healthy conversation looks like, just in case it's been a really long time that you don't even know what this would look like. because it's different than having a conversation that just results in the same outcomes over and over again. So remember, we aren't trying to change someone. We can ask for what we want and see if that's how they want to show up, see if that's something that they want to change. And for example, in the past, when I used to drink alcohol, I would get really insecure and I'd ask some of the same questions over and over again. I would show up really insecure, be kind of a little crazy, and my partner had many conversations about it, my partner and I. And each time we were making small adjustments on how we could handle it differently next time. And first it started with, we won't talk about it while we're drinking because it results in fighting. Then we figured the best way to diffuse it in the moment was kind of to say I love you and back away from one another, get some space. And then we tried, instead of backing away, to come closer together. And then we worked on different ways of drinking where we wouldn't drink without one another. And it was each time we were evaluating and getting extremely clear and extremely specific about how would we like to do things differently next time. And here's the thing that I want you to see is when my partner brought this up, he took ownership over it as well. Even though it was a behavior on my part, he would take ownership of it. And then I would take ownership of my part. And then I looked at this, this is actually something that I do want to do differently next time. So thank you for helping me navigate that. Versus in the past, other partners, one, they wouldn't own their part. They wouldn't say, hey, I saw that I did this and I noticed that behavior, created thoughts and feelings of insecurity for you. Like, how can, maybe I'll do this behavior differently. They wouldn't own that part. And they were saying, you do this and you do that. And instead, how would you like me to perceive it? And what could we do differently next time? It's a different vibe. And two, they wouldn't want to change their behavior. They'd say, you do this and you need to change this and you need to do this differently, without offering any suggestions, without, taking their part. It's just a different dynamic in that conversation. And you see, even if it's small, incremental changes moving forward. Number 5, trying hard and fighting to keep the relationship instead of fighting for yourself. It feels like a constant struggle when you're in that realm. And I do believe in the idea that relationships are like a dance and there's a back and forth between two humans. However, when you're constantly trying hard and fighting for a relationship at the expense of yourself, we have got to check that. You need to take care of you and fight for you first, and then you can show up in the relationship. Now, for me, this looks like remembering that my partner is a friend first. If there were zero expectations for my partner to be my husband and the father of our children, how would I handle what they're doing and saying? And how can I let go of those expectations first, not to dismiss them and be okay with those behaviors, but to then take care of myself first. And then I can come back to taking care of the situation and their behaviors from a clean, clear, grounded place of non-attachment to, them. And then we can identify and communicate what needs to happen, if anything, or whether or not I'd like to actually remain in this romantic partnership. Now, all of those are signs, right? So 5 of them, I'll repeat them again. You're trying to change your partner. You have a full body knowing it's a no. You're consistently justifying your authentic desires in life or compromising what you truly want to be able to stay in this relationship. You're having the conversations over and over without a different outcome. And you're trying hard, fighting to keep the relationship. Now, knowing these are the signs that I want you to look for, it's important to be sure that you know what not to do, okay? There's a couple bullet points that I want to make clear when it comes to, I see these signs and here's what I want you to not do. The first thing is, I do not want you to beat yourself up for not having left yet. This is a process. There are no rules. The world is going to demand that you leave immediately, and that you're less than if you don't leave immediately, even when you know you deserve better. That is not their call. The call is yours and yours only. And when everyone around you is telling you to leave, yes, you can take that into consideration and maybe look at what they're seeing that maybe you don't. But what I do not want you to do is beat yourself up or have negative self-talk. All that is standing in your way of leaving a relationship you know you want to leave is a thought error and a feeling. Because actions of leaving a relationship are created and fueled by feelings. And those feelings are created by the optional sentences, those thoughts in your brain that you're having. This is your journey, not anyone else's. And if you put pressure on leaving, you're going to feel urgency. And when you feel urgency, the actions that correlate that are not necessarily leaving. You'll either not leave because of feeling pressured and urgent, or you'll leave, but you'll go back because you didn't make that decision yourself. You didn't come to a calm, grounded place to make that decision. And then you're going to regret your decision. You're going to feel guilty. You're going to worry about whether or not you made the right decision. It is going to be so much easier to follow through with what you want to do from a calm, grounded, relaxed, non-attached place, which will start with you not beating yourself up for not leaving yet. Do not be an asshole to yourself. The second thing I want you to remember to not do is don't blame your partner's behavior for why you're leaving. Now, don't get me wrong. You might be leaving because of your partner's behavior. Okay? It might be the reason you're leaving, but don't blame it on that. I want you to take back the power of the situation. Instead of, he shows up that way, so I can't be with you. It's like, I want you to think about it. He or she is perfect for who they are and on their own journey. And that's not what I'm looking for in a partner. That doesn't mean you don't want to, you get to decide whether or not you want to be around that behavior, but get clear about what you do want, and you won't be so focused on trying to fix them into that. And you'll get to separate them from that, realizing regardless of the behavior, I get to do what I want to do, and they get to show up however they want to show up. And I either want to be around that behavior or not. The other thing that I don't want you to do is demand or convince. I do recommend communicating, but I don't want you to do it from a place of demanding or convincing. You can communicate what you want in a partnership and also leave room for them, to feel their feelings about what you've communicated, but do not demand them to change. Don't try to convince them to change. That's really up to them around whether or not they want to do things differently. And this is a magical place to be in because you have control. If you try to force them to do something, you lose. When you say, I'm looking for a partner who wants to talk to me multiple times a day, is that something you want? You are the one that has control, because if they say no, you get to take action accordingly. Lastly, do not gaslight yourself. You know what's real and you know what's true to you. Okay? You can trust you. I promise you. Deep down, you know yourself best. Yes, we must clean up our side of the street, but my guess is you've been doing that and you always will do that. It's just going to come down to, do I want to continue to do thought work on my relationship, or do I want to start doing work on other areas of my life? Either way, you're going to have to do work. But for me, it came down to one, if this never changed about my partner, am I willing to get okay with that? And two, if I had to do thought work on this for the rest of my life, would I be willing? And more importantly, would I want to? Your wants are just as important as your needs. So lastly, with all that being said, I want you to remember that a breakup is a decision. It is not a conversation. I think many of us want to have a breakup conversation, but it is a decision that you make or don't make. You decide and then you convey that information. And when you're finding yourself having breakup conversations, it's more like convincing or hoping they will want to change if you threaten to leave. And instead of that, I'd recommend asking if they want to show up the way you'd like a partner to show up. And if the answer is no, you get to make or not make a decision. Or if they say yes, you don't see an action change, then you get to make or not make a decision. Or they say yes and they actually work on what you said and you see incremental change, and awesome, you get to be closer, right? All right, my brave hearts, I love you so much. You are amazing exactly as you are. I hope you have a phenomenal week. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. If you found this episode helpful, please, please, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast for more episodes like this. If you found any of our episodes helpful, we would really love and appreciate a written review on the Apple Podcast app to help other heartbroken humans turn their pain into power and their heartbreak into happy. I love you guys, and I will talk to you next time. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.